It's always something. Hello, this is episode 200, and assuming it's recording, and we have Raj and Henning with us, and I'm about to have both of them introduce themselves. And if they're laughing, it's because I made a technical error and I messed up on the recording. So hopefully it's going to work this time. So, Raj, let's start with you. Hello, hello again, and tell folks a little bit about you and your company.
Hi, Dean. Thanks so much for having me. A little bit about me. I started in marketing about 8.5 years ago. So I'm a late in life entrepreneur. Prior to that, I have about 20 years of mostly big company experience, either as a direct employee in sales and marketing or as a strategy consultant. Had a great experience, but I wanted to get out of it. My journey with and marketing has been great, but it's been some roller coasters. Started off basically to help fulfill the need that marketing agencies were not doing a very good job of executing on. So built the company up as a startup founder. Then the pandemic hit, almost lost the entire business on the first day of the pandemic, worked my tail off through the pandemic to grow the business back. And then about 3 years ago, I discovered this term called fractional CMO. And I realized I take on the role of a fractional CMO. I just don't call it that. My business model wasn't exactly supportive of it. So changed the model a little bit around. And very quickly, I ran out of time as the fractional CMO. So I went to my community, went to my network, and I built up a community of fractional chief marketing officers. So highly qualified people who have tons of great marketing experience, but want to be independent contractors, call them fractional CMOs. Fast forward 3 years, we're proud to say we have 55 fractional chief marketing officers from every different background, every different industry, from sea to shining sea. And we basically fulfill the role of providing them training, coaching, tools, templates, and helping them align them with opportunities with lower middle market companies. So that's a little bit about us.
All right. And Henning, hi. Welcome.
Hey, Dean. Great to be here.
Tell folks a little bit about you and your company, and then I want to start off our set of questions by asking you a question.
Absolutely. I'm Henning Schwinum, calling in from California. I spent about 25 years earlier in my career in sales, leading sales teams for chemicals, for professional services, for SaaS, different geographies, different team sizes, different company sizes. And 6 years ago, I was done with that part of my career and wanted initially be a fractional executive, a fractional sales leader, fractional CSO, CRO, fractional VP of sales. And I quickly discovered that I wasn't well connected enough. I didn't know enough founders, owners, CEOs, board members, investors, startup communities. And when I looked for a matchmaker or an agency who could help me find those roles, there wasn't one. There wasn't one with focus on sales leaders. And that led me to pivot, start Vendox to be that missing matchmaker. And that's what we've been doing ever since, replacing fractional sales leaders into organizations anywhere from pre-revenue to about 100 million in revenue.
All right. So, Henning, what trends? It's been several years now, right? Business development, several years. What trends are you seeing around the demand for fractional executives right now?
There have been trends over the years. One consistent trend is that it changes all the time because it's a new industry, a new way of working, and that brings about a lot of change. More recently, two trends on the supply side. There is an oversupply, I believe, of executives at this point. Many find the model attractive and want to join in, but the demand side isn't catching up quite as fast. And on the demand side, as of recently, there have been a lot of micro trends. And the most recent one has been a sort of slowdown in the second quarter of 2025, I believe, due to the uncertainty in the economy around tariffs and other factors. But that has been not resolved politically, but it has been resolved as a trend because come June, July, we've seen an influx of opportunities for executives into fractional and interim roles.
Right. Raj, how about you? What do you see around the demand for chief marketers?
Absolutely. We also see a huge trend on the labor force. There's an explosion of extremely qualified, experienced people. There's probably not enough companies to take them on, just as Henning said. I would say on the company side, there is a growing awareness that a fractional executive is a suitable option. Maybe not as much as we want it to be, but definitely the conversation, or you don't have to educate people as much as you used to about what is a fractional executive. there's more acceptance of them. Maybe in the past, they were a little reluctant to take on a fractional executive because they didn't feel like the person had stake in the game. I don't think that exists anymore for the most part. I would say in my industry, maybe a little bit uniquely, but in the marketing industry, the major trend is AI right now. It's everywhere. It's affecting every part of our business. It's affecting our engagements with our clients. It's requiring us to provide training and education to a ton of fractional CMOs who need to be more equipped to do the work on a day-to-day basis. So I'd say those are two or three of the biggest trends that I'm noticing right now.
Okay. And so it's been, you talked about the pandemic, right? Hard to have a conversation these days that goes back multiple years without talking about the pandemic. What's been the hardest part of scaling up in the last several years?
Yeah, I would say the hardest part of scaling up has got to be driving a unique value proposition. So, I hate to go back to marketing theory, but it truly is true with my business. The market is changing pretty dynamically and very quickly. There are direct competitors, there are indirect competitors, and just like what we would tell our clients, it's really important to have a unique value proposition. And
Yeah.
so, by definition, if you're not differentiated, you're not unique, and you start to look like everybody else. So, in a fast-moving environment, you have direct competitors, you have indirect competitors, you have alternatives, all of whom are changing really quickly. So what you thought was unique even 3 or 6 months ago may not be unique today. So staying ahead of those rapidly changing trends, I would say that I'm facing in my business today as we grow and scale it.
And Henning, how about you? What's been the hardest part of scaling up?
Well, definitely the pandemic, because we
Mm.
started right before the pandemic, and so that first year was really a lost year when I think about scaling, because we were basically set back to zero and had to start over again. But at present, in the fractional industry, we're still talking about a relatively new movement, and there are many companies out there that have not had a fractional executive that are unfamiliar with this concept. And statistics tell us that about 25% of companies in the US have used a fractional executive, which means 75% have not. And that's the growth potential, but it also requires education. We have to continue to send the message out that fractional executives are a solution
Mhm.
to problems that startup and scale up founders are experiencing today, and that it makes sense to consider it and bring in a fractional executive to solve that particular problem that they're having.
All right. Um, Now, both of you guys are kind of the face of your company. And I'm curious because this wasn't always a thing, right? It used to be if somebody was at the head of their company and they were well known or intent on being known, they were pretty iconic, right? Like the Jack Welches and Lee Iacocca's and Steve Jobs of the world. But now, like most CEOs know that there's at least some part of their job is being a personal brand. But like Henning, I'm just curious, like what role does being a personal brand play in your company's visibility?
It is important. And today I can pinpoint the opportunities that
Wow.
come to us because of my personal brand, because of the way that I put myself out there over the last 6 years. And that's a good thing. And at the same time, I'm building a business that is meant to be independent of me and eventually
Right.
is meant to be an asset to be sold off. And so, with that, I have to be very cognizant of my role, and make sure that as much as I can, I put the company into the foreground and the brand into the foreground and pull myself back. But that's something that I think a lot of startup founders go through, and it's something that happens over time. And I'm sort of halfway through that journey.
Hmm. And Raj, how about you?
Yeah,
What's
total agreement.
what's involved in being like a personal brand as a
Yeah.
CEO?
Yeah, it's very much a double-edged sword, as Henning said. So what I would add to that is, the benefits are pretty good. I as myself, I don't particularly love being out in front of the brand, doing the demand gen, driving the thought leadership. Again, pick whatever word you want to be doing it. But we've done a ton of experimentation over the years, and what we have found through again experimentation with warm outreach, cold outreach, the brand, my name, other people's names, salespeople's names, all of these other types of things. Nothing compares to the ROI that happens when we are out in front as the leader. LinkedIn has done a bunch of work on this, and it validates the fact that people want to learn from human beings, and it
Right.
feels different when the same information is provided by a company. So I
Yeah.
think that ends up being a little bit of a double-edged sword, because as Henning said, it's really important to, while you're leading from the front, also bringing the brand along with you, because it ties yourself way too much to it. One of the most common problems we face when we're helping grow our clients' brands is actually extracting the CEO of the business and separating out his or her individual brand from the company's, because that is a natural ceiling on the business. And quite often that's where we face ourselves. So working through those and getting the brand of the company elevated above the brand of the individual ends up being a real challenge.
I want to talk about positioning or messaging to the marketplace for a moment. So obviously, like both companies have, they've grown, they've scaled, like they've been around for like multiple years now. Like, so Raj, I'll start with you. What sort of positioning or messaging to the marketplace was the one? And you didn't. I mean, nobody gets it right on day one. Which one, after iterating, which one ultimately clicked for your market and, and sort of got you traction?
Yeah, so I'll answer that for both sides of our market, because it's a
Mm-hmm.
two-sided marketplace, right? So I'm the eBay of fractional CMOs. So I would say on the labor force, what I often say to people is that there's easily 10,000 people who call themselves fractional CMOs on LinkedIn in the United States today, easily. So what I immediately say is I only want to talk to the top 5 or 10% of them. We have a pretty strict vetting process. So if you're invited to join, if you apply and are invited to join our community, you're already meet a really clear set of criteria. So the value proposition of allowing our fractionals to maintain their independence, because we're not full-time employees. We've done our research, and there's a lot of people who choose not to join those other wonderfully good companies, but they choose not to join those agreements. We specifically tailor to those types of people. So we know our market really well on the labor force side. On the fractional side, I'm sorry, on the company side, our value proposition also needs to be unique. And what we try to talk about is that we're the easiest to do the business with, that we are the most flexible when it comes to arrangements, because again, we know what our competitors are talking about, and we want to be the easy button. Going through those journeys was not
Yeah.
easy. It took a lot of iteration, it took a lot of experimentation, but I often go back to the fundamental of marketing and of sales is you really need to understand your customers' pain points and then build your value proposition and your company around them. If you try to force in an offer that you believe is correct for the wrong reasons, you're not going to have
Yeah.
much success. It also talks about the importance of experimentation, because even the smartest person with the best market research probably isn't going to get it right on the first
And
time.
Henning, how about you?
Yeah, well, Raj is the expert on marketing,
Yeah.
branding, and positioning. I'm just a humble follower of what experts like Raj tell me. We have gone through several iterations of our positioning. We did start out by saying, we place interim and fractional executives. That did not resonate in the way that I thought it would, because the concept is lesser known. And so over time, we've migrated to a positioning that really talks about the problems that we're solving. We help you scale your business, we help you grow your business by bringing in the right sales talent. And from a differentiation point of view, it is absolutely correct that we have to show how we're different from others that are direct or indirect competitors. And so, what our messaging centers around is precision. We build our own matching software to always find that perfectly matching executive for the client, the flexibility around the assignment type and how to structure it and how to transition it over time, and velocity or speed is our third trademark, because we operate off a pre-vetted roster. And if the pressure is there to bring somebody in, we can have the right person in there within days, and not months like most traditional recruiters do.
All right. So Henning, I want to stay with you for a second. Now, there are a lot of different um, client acquisition tactics, right? There's lots of communication channels, there's lots of marketing approaches, there's lots of theories, right? Everything from, just calling somebody to direct mail, TV, social, just as little convention booths, whatever, right? Which of those like just didn't work for you guys?
I appreciate the question. What didn't work? Because typically people ask what works
Yeah.
or what are you doing today? And over the years, we've experimented with, I believe, just about every tactic
Mhm.
under the sun, and we have found some that don't work. Something that doesn't work is direct outreach, thinking that just because you call they're going to engage a fractional executive. I believe in the fractional executive market the biggest challenge is, or the biggest factor is, timing. And it's really hard from the outside in to determine, is this company ripe
Mhm.
or ready? Because neither investment nor departure of an executive nor other factors that are publicly visible will tell you whether the mindset of the founder and owner is ready for a fractional executive. So what doesn't work is to reach out and expect that the client says, I'm ready to go. Thank you for calling me. Um,
Right.
in contrast to that, I would put anything around content, anything around building long-term relationships, building partnerships. Those are tactics that work for us.
And Raj, what didn't work for you guys?
Yeah, I would say the thing that definitely did not work is anything that you would categorize in the high pressure sales area, right?
Mhm.
So trying to get a one call close, trying a bunch of cold outreach, a cold emails, cold LinkedIn DMs, and assuming that that person was just sitting there desperate. We experimented with so many different types of these different tactics over the years. And some of them do work, but when you put it through an ROI or a return on ad spend type of a
Right.
filter, none of them ended up working, right? Worth experimenting, not worth scaling. So I would say that's the number one. And if you go back to the fundamental of it, it makes a lot of sense. CEOs aren't sitting there desperately waiting for somebody they've never heard of to sell them their wares, right? They usually are used to working through their trusted networks. They're used to working through educational content, going through a journey, and when they're ready to buy, they'll buy. So I think anything that's high pressured or one call closes generally do not work.
Let's stay with prospects for a second. Uh, so, initial contact's been made. Eventually, a conversation happens, right? Neither one of you guys sell something that someone can just buy on a website for with a credit card. There's a sales process. So, Raj, as you're talking to prospects, like early on in the process, like what's a red flag that they would throw up where you're like, these guys are not for me, or these guys probably shouldn't be talking to any fractional organization?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we have kind of two red flags. So number one is what I call know-it-allism. So if you are a CEO or a company leader that thinks they want a marketing leader but already have all of the answers, it's probably
Mm-hmm.
not a good fit. What I usually tell them to do in that type of a situation is either find a lower level individual, maybe like a director, and say, if you have a clear strategy, save yourself a bunch of money, hire an
Yeah.
internal director and have that person implement it. Or when I'm feeling a little spicy or sarcastic, I tell them to take their city name and then Google marketing agency in that city. And I said, go find somebody who can go execute what you're looking to do because it's probably for us. I'd say that's the number one red flag that we have. I'd say the number two red flag is I don't generally like to work with jerks, and so we have a no a-hole rule pretty generally in our company. I had plenty of that in my time in corporate America, and I decided I just don't want people like that in my orbit. So I often say I'm too old to mess with them, and so I don't do that. So if I pick up those vibes, it's a corollary of know-it-allism. But if it's just somebody who feels like the vendor or the partner is subservient into them and doesn't have respect for their time or their energy, I just don't deal with them very well. So I would say those are the two red flags
And
I can identify pretty
Henny,
quickly.
what about you guys? What's a red flag early on in the sales process where you're thinking, not these guys?
Well, definitely the two that Raj mentioned.
Uh,
But particularly from a sales perspective, I'll add a third one, and it's somebody who wants to compensate on a commission basis only. We're dealing a lot with startup and scale up companies,
right.
and it sounds like a really appealing no risk approach to say, I want somebody who bears all the risk. And to me, that is not the right approach. I always tell founders, you will find somebody who's desperate enough to work on that basis, but that's not the quality person you want to represent your company in the marketplace. It has to be a shared risk, shared reward model where, yes, because we're in sales, there can be a commission, a bonus component as part of the compensation, but at the same time, there has to be a retainer that's included as well, because the executive brings their expertise to the table from day one. There are a lot of things that can go wrong in the sales process that are totally unrelated and not
Right.
the responsibility of the fractional executive. They're around the product, the market, the company. A lot of things can go wrong, and you can't put all the risk on an executive. And any executive who has a who has pride in their profession will not take a role like that, because they totally understand how their expertise is getting milked and how their chances of success are near zero if that's the only thing a company owner is willing to consider. And sort of the last thought that I always share with the founder is, if you spend all your money on the product and you have nothing left to invest in sales and marketing, that's not my problem. That's your problem. You made the mistake early on in starting your business.
Yeah, Henning, my favorite response to somebody, if I may,
Mhm.
who wants to work on a commission only basis is I'd say I'll take it as long as I'm allowed to fire anybody who screws up anywhere in the value chain. If I can fire that person for not doing their job because I did mine and my compensation is tied to their success, am I allowed to fire them? And I've yet to have a CEO agree to that. So I'll let you know when that happens, and maybe we can work on it together.
Okay, so Henning, so I have one more question for you guys before we wind down. And so, if you were going to start again today, is there anything that you would do differently?
Yes, I would more immediately um, begin to build partnerships and relationships with other fractional organizations, groups like Rajas, because while we think that we're unique, there are many other organizations out there who operate in the same space. And none of us have all the answers. None of us have all the talent that addresses all the issues that a client has. But when we start talking to them and we earn their trust, then we hear about all these other issues, and that gives me the opportunity to introduce and bring in others, because their talent, their solution is what the client needs. And we've built this partnership network now after 6 years, but it wasn't an initial focus. So I would definitely put more emphasis on that right from the get-go.
And Raj, how about you? What would someone starting today have to do or look at differently than what you looked at 5 years ago? Say,
Where would I start, Dean? So, I mean, as a first
yeah.
time late in life founder, there's so many mistakes you make. So, off the top of my head, I just thought of maybe two or three of them. So, the first mistake I made was being a solo founder. I would never do
Mhm.
that again. I would want somebody in the pen with me. I unfortunately have a wonderful leadership team now, but I would start with a partnership 50-50, or something very close to 50-50, so I know somebody's in it with me from ground zero. So that's just as an entrepreneur. Specifically related to my business, I would say I overestimated the quality control aspect. I had assumed that if you take extremely qualified on paper executives and you put them into a new type of role, that they would be successful on their own. And I was extremely unpleasantly surprised that that's not actually true. So I would keep a much closer pulse on quality control to make sure the deliverables that they're producing for their clients meet a certain quality standard. So I'd say that's number two. And then number three has got to be back to AI. So I would build everything around my offer, my delivery, and specifically what my fractionals are taking to their clients built around AI, either some sort of a software or some suite of AI tools that they're equipped with, so they can not only deliver at a high quality, but bring some level of expertise to their clients, because I think companies desperately need it now. So those are just three off the top of my head.
All right, guys, this has been fantastic. Thanks for the hiccup, recovering from the hiccup earlier. Raj, I'll start with you, and then we'll switch to Henning. Last question: who should be contacting you these days, and what's the best way for them to do it?
Yeah, got it. I would love to speak to CEOs in particular of middle market companies who are looking to grow, or are going through other types of massive changes. So we don't want to deal with people who like the way that their business is. They're not going through very many changes. We work really well with people who are going through massive changes. That could be your customers. That could be your internal goals and aspirations. That could be something happening with your competitors. So we want to talk to those CEOs who want a different look at how they're approaching their business.
And the best way to get to you?
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm not very difficult to find. I got a unique name, so you can always find me on LinkedIn, RAJATKAPUR, or you're welcome to go to our website, which is and-marketing.com.
All right. And Henning, how about you? Who should be contacting you these days, and how should they get to you?
Well, how can they get to me? Look at vendux.org, vendux.org. That's our website. And like Raj, there's only one Henning Schwinum on LinkedIn, unlike some of the other names. I love to talk to founders, owners, CEOs, anywhere from pre-revenue to 100 million in AR or ARR that have a challenge in sales. I love to talk to them, not because fractional is always the right answer, but because I feel that after 25 years, I have some insights that I can share, and maybe we can scope a solution around a fractional executive for their particular problem.
Right. All right. And I do have a question. Why is it .org?
Because .com was taken when I started the
Dang it.
company, and at that point, I had fallen in love with the name Vendex because it's a play on Latin words,
Right.
and I wanted to stick with it, so I took .org.
All right. Excellent. Well, guys, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And we'll see everyone next time. And you're probably watching this as a clip, but in case you watch the full episode, see you next time. And thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks so much, Dean. Appreciate your time. Henning, it was very nice meeting you.
Raj, great to
Cheers.
meet you. Take care, Dean. Thank you.